told me himself he wants to be like Baby Jet. Look.
YouTube, what's going on? It's your boy Matty B here. Welcome back to the channel. Thank you guys very much for watching. I really appreciate it. I cannot believe what my channel has grown into. We just hit 15,000 subscribers, and I'm definitely really stoked on that. Been working hard with the channel, trying to pump out the content, and I really enjoy it as well, so definitely expect it to keep going. Most of you guys probably know that this channel started out with, and up until very recently, it's mostly been centered around me and my racing, which I'm definitely not trying to stray too far away from that. I'm still racing, still doing the last 3 nationals, but after not qualifying for a couple, I've been taking a lot of footage of the motos that I haven't been participating in, and then I had the privilege to go down to Loretta's and spend the week down there as well, a few days at least, and people really seem to be into the content that's not even about me, and I've really been enjoying it, so I figured I'd branch out just a little bit and give you guys a little recap on my thoughts on Loretta's. I've been a racer at Loretta's like 12, 13 years, I don't even know, and have been there countless times besides that. It had been 5 years since I've been to Loretta's before this year, but was thankful for the opportunity to be able to spend Tuesday through Friday down there, get some awesome content, meet some awesome people, see some old friends, and just enjoy some great racing. The ranch is always good. It's the best of the best as far as amateur motocross is concerned here in the States, and this year was wild. I've been to a lot of Loretta Lynn's before, and I've never been to one with this much rain. I've never been to one where they were this far behind schedule, but got to give props to the crew. They ended up making it a raceable track somehow, and somehow, by the grace of God, getting all the motos in, even the 50s, where we almost had an incident where the 50 parents stormed the Capitol. The 50 parents all went to the MX Sports office and demanded third motos. They said, no choice, we paid, we're racing, and they got them in. So props to the MX Sports crew, Loretta Lynn's, for getting the program in complete adverse weather and condition. Got to see some great racing and got to capture some awesome content of some of these up-and-coming stars who I'll go ahead and start talking about here in a minute. I saw some great racing. The future of American motocross is looking bright, and figured I'd chat with you guys a little bit and give you guys some insight on who the next big things are, who was a little underrated, and who might have had a bad week but still has some potential, and just all the ins and outs of what I thought from the week. And my opinion ain't gospel by any means. I mean, I haven't even been making the last few nationals, so what do I really know? But I've been around the sport a lot, and I feel like some of you guys might enjoy my insight, and I enjoy talking about it, so why the hell not, you know? So without further ado, we'll start with the premier class of the event, the guys that are here about to go pro, some of them even this weekend, the 250 and Open Pro Sport classes. I knew the man to beat coming in was going to be Daxton Bennick. He's already done a few pro nationals. I think he's even gotten top 10, qualified first at Redbud out of the B group. He's already ready to be a professional, but he's riding for Star Racing Yamaha. He's doing what the team wants him to do. The team wants him to finish it out through Loretta's, and then he'll be pro this weekend at Unadilla. Dax was very impressive. I think he even was sick on Wednesday or so. He had a pretty bad 250 Pro Sport moto. I think he was sick, and then he rebounded to absolutely stomp those guys in the second moto that day of Open Pro Sports. So he ended up going 1-1-1 in that Open Pro Sport, and then got a second overall in the 250 Pro Sport. Very impressive week for Dax. He got the Horizon Award as well, so congratulations to him. A great kid, great family, and I love to see where he's at now. He's even racing with him last year at Budds Creek on Amateur Day with Deegan. He's come a long way since then, and I was kind of battling with him that day, and now I don't think I'd have a chance. So props to Dax on all the hard work. He's been doing what he needs to do, and it's paying off clearly. Then the other championship in that class, we had the 250 Pro Sport champion, Gavin Towers. Super stoked for Gavin Towers. This was a very well-deserved championship. Gavin actually broke his collarbone at the regional, got it plated. I think he raced like 6 days later to barely make it into the ranch. And then I think he spent most of the summer off, only had a handful of days on the bike, he told me, and then comes out with a 4th in the Open Pro Sport after, I think, a bad moto. And then he ended up getting the championship in 250 Pro Sport, his first championship at the ranch. Emotions were running high. Wes Kane was stoked. Hey, I'm Wes Kane and you're not. But Gavin Towers, champion of the 250 Pro Sport, well-deserved, well-earned, and I'm not sure what his pro plans are going to be. The poor dude's been injured a lot more than he's been not injured in the last year or two, and He's got tons and tons of potential. I'm just not sure what the future's looking like, if he'll stay amateur or do some more pro. But wherever he goes, Gavin Towers is going to be shredding for sure. Then we had Julien Beaumer. He was probably the fastest dude in that class that didn't get a championship. He had a couple bad motos, a couple moto wins. I think he went like 1:17.1 in one of the classes. Juju's supposed to be making the pro debut at Budds Creek next weekend, so that'll be really interesting to see. I think he'll probably slot somewhere around near where Bennick was when he raced the Nationals, so he should be well in that top 15, and he's working with Davey Millsaps, so he should have a bright future as well. He's got some good guidance and under that KTM group. Then we got Mark Fineis. He had a 250 Pro Sport title pretty much ripped away from him. I'm not sure if it was by his own doing or not. I wasn't there. But in the 250 Pro Sport class, he won 2-1, and then I think he had a DNF in the third moto, so that was a heartbreak for Fineis. He's got some really good speed, really good fitness. Not the best starts, but he's always digging the whole way through and coming through the pack, it seems like. I think he's going to be making the pro debut these last three as well, and I have a feeling he'll probably be pretty good in pro motocross just because of the fitness. So Phineas will be a good one here coming up shortly. A surprise for me, I don't know much about this kid, but I tried to learn a little bit throughout the week. Parker Ross, he rides for an off-road Honda team, actually, the same one as Cole Martinez, who won the Pro Sport last year. And Parker Ross actually got a third and a second overall in the Pro Sport classes, which is super, super impressive. I mean, it was obviously a really muddy week, and finishes were kind of all over the place, but Parker Ross with a second and a third. I know nothing about his plans for the future, but he had a great week at the ranch. Next, we got Avery Long, an amateur Yamaha team rider out of Minnesota. Really nice kid. I met him last year at a race in Iowa. Seems like a really hard worker with some good fitness and great speed. He had a second place in a Pro Sport moto at the beginning of the week, I believe, and should have been set up for a podium overall, at least in the Open Pro Sport, and he had a DNF in the last moto that took that away from him. We had a couple bigger name guys that I expected to do a little better that had a struggle. Evan Ferry had a little bit of a hard week. Brad West from Australia had a little bit of a struggle, and Jadon Clough from Minnesota, he had a couple single-digit numbers, so he was top 10 last year. He had a rough week as well. I think he had a couple good moto finishes, but a couple DNFs also. I've seen a lot of negative comments and some pretty harsh judgments about Evan Ferry in my YouTube comments and stuff. I'm sure, you know, the results aren't good. It's definitely not the greatest look. I mean, Evan, as far as his trajectory goes, it doesn't look like he's in his best form right now, but I think we all need to save our judgment for whenever we see him on the Triumph. I think it's not the biggest secret that he's been linked to the Triumph team, and I'm sure he's been doing a lot of testing on the Triumph, and then he's riding Yamaha earlier this year, and then he's obviously on the Triumph a lot, and then now he's on a gas. So he's just been switching equipment a lot. Even though the results weren't what we were looking for Evan Ferry, don't count him out. His dad obviously knows what they're doing. He's got some great guidance, and you know, they might just be playing the long game. We might see him on this Triumph, and he might be barking. You never know. Rough week as well for some guys I expected a lot out of because they had some good results at the Pro Nationals. They all had top 20 results at Pro Nationals. We had Lux Turner, Matti Jorgensen, and Preston boespflug all had a little bit of a tough week. They had some finishes outside the top 10, and I expected a little bit more out of them just because of their results at the Nationals, but the Nationals and Loretta's are different. Loretta's is a super unique track and unique event, and with the weather that we had as well, it was a little bit of a toss-up. So bummer week for those guys, but I'm sure they still got plenty of better days ahead of them. Bryce Shelley was another one. He ended up having a decent overall result in the Open Pro Sport. I expected just a little bit more out of him just because he actually got 11th overall at Red Bud Pro National in the 450 class, which I was super, super impressed with. He whole shot at the first Pro Sport moto of the week, and I think might have just gotten tightened up and had a little bit of a rough moto, but then rebounded and ended up 4th in the Open Pro Sport. I think he was 10th in the 250 Pro Sport, so not the best week for him, but I do think he's going back for the 450 class for these last 3 Nationals, and probably going to kick the ass of yours truly while doing it, so look out for Bryce Shelley these next few Nationals. Last but not least, we had some vets that were just barking in the pro class. We had Jacob Hayes and Heath Harrison. Jacob Hayes was a 5th. Heath Harrison was a 6th. Heath Harrison even timed the absolute crap out of the gate in the last moto. I'll try to roll the clip right here, but Heath timed the gate, pulled a fat hole shot, and got a 2nd in the last moto, landed it on the box, and I think Jacob Hayes was on the box that moto too. So we had daxton Bennick first, and then the 2 vets, 2-3. So can't sleep on those guys, a little bit older age, but they're still shredding for sure. We'll move on to the 250B and schoolboy classes. I think the class of the field, even though the results might not tell the tale, was Casey Cochran, the Rockstar Energy Husky. He won the first 2 motos of the week, and then third moto he crashed in the mud and dislocated his shoulder. So the second half of the week, I think, was a bit of a struggle for him. He still came out with 1 championship in Schoolboy 2 class, even after dislocating the shoulder, so that was super impressive. I'm not sure what the plans are now that he's had the shoulder injury, but I think they were trying to rush him up to pro a little bit sooner than expected, so keep your eyes peeled for Casey Cochran making a pro debut at some point here in the next year or so. I'm sure it won't be long before he's behind the gate. Then the other championship, we had Krystian, Janik, Team Green, Kawasaki. Team Green was super stacked in these B classes. They had Krystian, Janik, Drew Adams, and Enzo Temmerman all up front. So we were seeing a lot of green in those B classes, and Krystian Janik had a great week as well with the win in 250B and a 4th in Schoolboy 2. I think he was in contention for that Schoolboy 2 one as well, but ended up having a bad last moto and ended up 4th overall. So really impressive week for Krystian Janik, a little bit of a breakout week for him actually, and just at the right time in the B class. It's ultra competitive, and that's about the time when the teams are really starting to figure out who's who and see who's going to go far. So good job for Krystian Janik. Then we had Drew Adams. Drew is a little bit younger. Drew Adams and Enzo Temmerman are a little bit younger than the rest of these guys in the field. So great job for those guys to ride up an age, not really an age group because it's the B class, but they are kind of riding up against guys older than them. So great job for those two. Drew Adams almost had a title in the 250B, ended up 2nd in 250B, and had a bad moto that ruined the overall in that Schoolboy 2 class. And Enzo Temmerman, he had some good motos. He was part of a huge battle with Drew Adams, Logan Best, and Casey Cochran for that first Schoolboy 2 moto. And those kids, they showed a lot, and even though they didn't quite put it together this week, you know, that's kind of part of the learning process of being an amateur. They're making the mistakes now so they can kind of figure it out and get it ironed out before they go pro. So definitely, I think, a promising future out of those two. And really this whole age group, this 250B and Schoolboy 2 group, there's a lot of talent right now, and I think there's a handful of kids that are going to have a pretty solid future in the sport. So really fun to watch there. Then we had a guy I know nothing about, Casey Bernard. My boy Taylor Muto was working for him, so that's the only reason I knew who he was, but he ended up a 3rd in 250B and 5th in Schoolboy 2, and those are like the 2 most highly contested B classes at the ranch, so super impressive result, and I feel bad for not knowing much about him, but I do know he's from Arizona, and somehow he came alive whenever the rain started to fall and it got muddy. Somehow this dude just started shredding, and being from Arizona, that makes no sense because I didn't think it had rained in Arizona since like World War II or maybe even earlier. So mad props to him for showing out like that. Then we also had a good friend of mine, Logan Best. He had some really good motos and some bad motos, just a little bit of an inconsistent week for him. I even had a video of the poor dude coming out of the start in 2nd in the last moto in the mud, going to pull a tear off and just absolutely face planting in a mud pile. So a lot of speed from Logan Best. He's down there riding in Florida with the Star Racing guys during the week. So he's around all the people he needs to be around. He's doing all the stuff he needs to be doing to be a successful pro here in the next few years. Just working on putting all the pieces together all in the same week, and I think he'll be dialed in. But he's got tons of speed. He's got a really great work ethic, great family behind him, and definitely don't sleep on Logan Best. The results weren't the best this week. A 10th in 250B and a 6th in Schoolboy 2. So that, I'm sure they're incredibly disappointed with the results, but the speed's there, the talent's there, the work ethic's there. You just got to put it all together. Landin Peppered, he's the Alaskan assassin. I like to joke that he's Ben LeMay's cousin because he's the only one I know that races motocross from Alaska, but Landin Peppered had a really solid week, an 8th in 250B and a 2nd in Schoolboy 2, so really impressive with that 2nd place in Schoolboy 2 behind Casey Cochran. I think the mud might have helped out Peppered a little bit. He had some really good rides in the mud that second half of the week, but it's a great equalizer. It was the same for everybody, and great job to Peppered for making do of the treacherous conditions out there in the mud. And then I talked about Enzo Temmerman a little bit. He's a little on the younger side as well. He was a 5th in 250B and a 3rd in Schoolboy 2. So a solid week for Temmerman actually, and I would think we would expect to see him in those B classes again next year. And then one more guy I gotta throw a shout out to, Jadon Cooper on the number 20. He's got some Team Green support this year. You guys probably know his dad, Chris Cooper, from Kiefer Testing. He's always on PulpMX and stuff, but Lil Kiefer, he's making a name for himself. The first moto of the week, the dude was ripping in like 2nd for over half the moto behind Casey Cochran. I remember it's only been but a handful of years since Jadon was down there at Loretta's in the C class, so Jadon's come a long way. It looks like the progress has been really good, and he's riding really good right now. I'm impressed to see how far he's come in such a short time, and with the resources he's got and with his dad around. I have a feeling we're going to be seeing a lot more Jadon Cooper in the future. Then we've got the 250B Limited and the 450B classes. I didn't watch these quite as much or pay quite as much attention to these as 250B and Schoolboy 2 are the premier classes. But a few standouts of these classes, Fappani and Leum Oehlhof, I think, were the two main standouts of the limited classes. They kind of did like Levi Kitchen style of a few years ago, riding limited instead of the 250B and Schoolboy 2, where most of the heavy hitters are. They're trying to stand out and win the 250 limited class, 450B limited class. So Fappani ended up taking the 250B limited with, he actually, third moto, he was way back and made an insane charge back up to the front to take the title from Oehlhof. So that was pretty impressive in the mud. And then Oehlhof took the 450B limited title, which was a good job for him. He's actually the son of Joe Oehlhof, a legend from pro motocross and supercross from back in the day. So cool to see the second generation talent getting it done at the ranch. Just a couple other guys. We had Nicolas Israel. I'm not sure what country he's from. My apologies, brother, but he went like 127-1 in the 450B class. I've seen tons of videos on Instagram of this dude just throwing down, just doing mental stuff, doing huge whips. Just the dude sends it. So shout out to Nicolas Israel. He got that second moto figured out. He would have had a title for sure. But his misfortune, that second moto led to a title for Jadon Cooper. I don't really know Jayden or much about him, but I can remember hearing of him in the C class and then even in the B class like years and years.
We had a couple top guys out of the 125 class this year. Luke Fowler was out with, I believe, a wrist injury, and then Will Cannaguire was unfortunately hurt while representing the USA and Romania at the World Junior Championship.
The mom and dad were down there. Everybody was stoked, and it just seemed like a dream come true for the kids. So congratulations. Hard work paid off for you, Jadon Cooper, and just love to see that passion for the sport like that. It's super cool. We got our 125 class. The star there was Klark Robbins out of New Jersey. I know Klark a little bit from riding at south of the border. He's a great rider, great kid, good family, the whole 9 yards. They got the whole package. I think he's being eyed up by KTM Orange Brigade as we speak, but he ended up coming away with 2 titles. Very impressive week for Klark. I think those were his 2 first titles that Loretta's he's ever had, so great job for him. He ended up stealing them away from Tiger Wood on the 43, the Aussie from MTF. Tiger Woods kind of been the man to beat all year, I think, and he started out the week kind of similarly at the ranch. He, I think, was all first and second in all the first and second motos, and the third motos in the mud. I just don't know if he's not a mud guy or maybe the pressure got to him or what, but unfortunately the third moto derailed Tiger Wood in both of his 125 classes, so that was a bummer, and I think he ended up with a 7th and a 4th, so the results don't tell the tale for Tiger Wood. He was at the very worst, the second best guy there, so him and Klark Robbins, they were battling out. They had some great races, and I think there's a bright future in place for both of those two. I'm sure they'll be moving up to the 250Fs here in the next, probably right about as we speak. So we'll see them on 4-strokes and up into the pro ranks here in the next couple of years, I'm sure. Kade Johnson, NSA amateur Yamaha team rider, got a 2nd and a 10th. A good ride for him. I haven't heard a whole lot from Kade Johnson this year. I remember watching Kade Johnson on a 65 at Mini-O's, like, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, and kid was incredible. Like, he looked like a little prodigy. He was doing stuff that I hadn't really seen kids on 65s do before. I think maybe there's been some injuries in the equation that he's been working through, but a solid way to end the week for Kade Johnson. Got a mud moto win in one of those classes and on his way to a 2nd overall, so that was good for him. Owen Covell from New England was a 2nd and a 4th overall, got a moto win in the mud on Saturday, and he was another one. He kind of came to life whenever it started raining and got muddy. He had some really good mud results, and that definitely helped out his overall result as well. But he was good all week, consistent all week, and he was always in it. Then you had a few other guys. Krystian Merman got a 3rd in one of the 125 classes. Another good buddy of mine, Austin Schaefer from south of the border, he actually could have been in championship contention in one of the classes. He had, I think, like a 17 and a 3-3, and he actually had some broken reeds in the first moto, so if he could have salvaged a decent first moto, he could have been in championship contention, but he had a few moto podiums and a couple top 10 overall, so that was a good week for him. Solid riding. And then there was a handful of kids. It was kind of inconsistent. The moto finishes were all over the place. Obviously, with the rain, that didn't help either, but It was pretty inconsistent. There was a few guys that had some good motos, but just weren't consistent. We had Ryder Thompson, Nathan Abbott, Carter Malcolm, Thor Powell had some good rides in the mud. He's a GNCC guy, so he was feeling
some top guys we were missing in the Super Mini class: Landon Gibson, Gas Rider, and Caden Dudney, a Team Green kid. Both actually moved up to big bikes early, so no racing for them this week.
No great overall results for those guys, but they definitely showed something. Then we got our Super Minis. I don't know these kids as well as all that I've been talking about so far, but I did try to pay as much attention while I was at the ranch as possible. I think the main two guys of the week were Deacon Deno and Landen Gordon. I've heard of Landen Gordon for quite a few years. He used to race some kids that I trained, and he's been around for a while. I didn't really know anything about Deacon Deno. He's from Texas. I do know that, but I watched him ride. Kid's got a great style, really good technique, and kid put it to him. He got the championship in one of the classes, and I think he might have been in line for the championship in the other class, or he was right there. He was leading the third moto, and I think he had a last lap crash, and that pushed him back to a third overall, but definitely a breakout week for Deacon Deno. I'm sure he'll be one to watch out for in the future. And then Landen Gordon also, that's one of the Team Green kids, and I think he's under the same agent as the Lawrence brothers, so he's on the right path to success. He got a title in one of the classes and a second in the other, so on paper that was the best Super Mini rider, Landen Gordon, but I think Deacon Deno might have just had a tick on him in speed, but I do think Gordon has been hurt a lot this year. I heard something about a broken femur a few months ago, so he's on the come up and had a great week as well, coming off injury. So good job to Landen Gordon. Then we had a couple others, Seth Dennis and Cole Timbo. Seth Dennis is an Orange Brigade kid out of Florida. He ended up with a third and a fourth. And then Cole Timbo, I don't really know anything about, my apologies, but California kid ended up with a second and a fifth. Very impressive in that group of kids. It's really a highly contested class in that Super Mini. And then even Kenyon Richards, he didn't get any good overall results, but he had a couple of moto podiums, and he was up front the whole week. Just had a couple of bike problems that derailed him in the overall, so that was a bummer for Kenyon Richards, but he showed a lot of speed, a lot of grit as well. Last but not least, we'll talk about 25 plus. Heath Harrison got the win with a 1-1-1, made it look pretty easy. Didn't even have to jump the gate to do it. He saved that for Pro Sport, but Heath Harrison got the win. Jacob Hayes, my boy, North Carolina local, gets a second. Jacob never really had a chance at Heath. Heath just kept getting hole shots and was going out to the lead and just checking out, and by the time Jacob was getting into second, he didn't really have much of a chance. I think it would have probably been a pretty good race had they started together. I think they were pretty evenly matched, but we just never really got to see it materialize, so that was kind of a bummer. Third, a Venezuelan, Carlos Badiali. I actually have raced that guy a little bit like 10, 11 years ago in the amateurs. Did not know he was still around, but got him a third in 25 plus and won the second two motos at 30 plus, but a DNF derailed him in that one, so no championship there. Then we had Ben Nelko. He's a GNCC guy. I think he's just converting himself back to moto here recently. So Ben Nelko was solid. He got into a couple crashes, one with lappers and one, I think, with another guy. So a couple of crashes kept him off the podium. He had a lot of potential to be a podium guy, but a couple of incidents kept him off of that. So a fourth overall for Ben Nelko. Luke Von Linger, fifth. He's no stranger at the ranch. He's always up there in the mix in the 25 plus. Not really ever a championship guy, but he's always guaranteed to be in the mix. So a fifth for Von Linger. One thing I really like about 25 plus is you see some legends that you haven't seen for a while come back. I think last year we had Taryn Odell, which was cool to see. This year we had Kyle Swanson and Lance Vincent. Kyle Swanson actually got a third in the first moto, and Lance Vincent, I haven't heard his name in probably 12 years at least. Old Louisiana boy out of the bayou, and he actually had a solid week. He was sixth overall, just had a bad first moto. I think he was part of the crash with Nelko in the first moto, and to come out of the woodworks for a sixth overall, that's actually pretty solid. So shout out Lance Vincent. I love to see it. Then we got Brock Peterson. He was a seventh, and he also was your champ in 30 plus. So good week for Brock Peterson. And then we had Ben LeMay. That's another legend. Ben LeMay was in the 8th spot, which you would expect a lot more out of Ben LeMay. He was running up front in the first moto for a little bit, but I heard some rumblings of Ben LeMay having food poisoning for the whole week at Loretta's. So Loretta's is already hard enough with a healthy body, so doing all that work down there in that heat with food poisoning, I can't imagine that being a very fun experience. So a bit of a suffer for Ben LeMay, but hopefully we'll see him back at the ranch again another time in full force. A personal favorite of mine, Cody Williams out of Wisconsin. He was riding KTM 252 stroke in 25 plus, and he actually pretty much yanked the whole shot second moto in the mud on the 2-stroke, and then he went back into that second straightaway, back through the woods, and him and Heath Harrison kind of kamikazed into the corner together, and unfortunately Heath won that battle. Cody hit the deck, and Heath got out of it, and Cody went down. I was really hoping to see Cody Williams put that 2-stroke up towards the front in 25 plus against all the 450s. As you guys know, I'm aware that it's not an easy thing to do, but mad props to Cody for taking on the challenge and getting out there. I really love to see it. My boy David Lambeth, East Coast Films, was out there. He got a moto in under the 10, 13th overall, so a good showing for him, and some good content from him as well. Go ahead and check out East Coast Films on the tube if you haven't already. He's got some good stuff from the ranch. And last but not least, Chris Kiefer, DNF, DNS, DNS. I thought I was done with my report, and I got to the bottom of the results, and I saw that. I guess Aiden's moto was right before Chris's 25 plus moto. Aiden's Chris's son, so obviously Chris wants to watch his son, his upcoming amateur son. He wants to watch him try to do good in the B class. Obviously that's important for them and the family, but definitely a bummer to see him DNF, DNS, DNS. I mean, I get it, the motos were back-to-back, but man, come on, Chris, racers race. But at the end of the day, I haven't been racing lately either. I've just been doing qualifying practice, so who am I to judge? That's about all the action I really paid much attention to and watched at the ranch. I wasn't really trying to talk about a lot of stuff I didn't know about. I don't want to just sit here and BS you guys and try to make stuff up. So that's really all the stuff that I observed while I was at the ranch, and really had a good time watching. It's always a fun week down there. A lot of legends down there racing and watching. Legends at the beer tent, just legends everywhere you look. So a really fun week to just relax and watch some racing instead of participate, and give the body a little rest and just take a little content. And I really enjoyed being down there. Really enjoyed the time, and enjoyed talking about what I think is going places in amateur motocross here in the next few years. I think the future is looking bright, and I'm really looking forward to following along with these kids' progress throughout the next few years. It's going to be good, and I appreciate you guys watching the channel. Thank you very much, and I'd be stoked to talk to you guys about it in the comments and keep the conversation going. Thank you guys for watching, and stay tuned. I'll have an update on my own racing up here tomorrow, and yeah, I'll see you guys next time.